For over 200 years, Earth had been little more than a footnote in the vast records of the Galactic Concord. It was a small, late-arriving world that had only recently stumbled into interstellar travel. The other species of the Concord, ancient, powerful, and proud, had watched humanity with mild curiosity at first, then with growing boredom. Humans were loud, emotional, and messy. They argued among themselves, built fragile cities, and seemed to change their minds every few decades. To the 7 great species that ruled the Concord, Earth was harmless, unimportant, barely worth noticing. The Concord Council, made up of representatives from those 7 species, had granted Earth observer status only as a formality. They allowed a few human diplomats to sit in the outer chambers, silent and unseen, while real decisions were made. Earth's solar system lay along a quiet trade corridor, far from any major conflict zones and posed no threat to anyone. So the Council tolerated them, like one might tolerate a stray animal that stayed out of the way. Then, without warning, Earth disappeared. Not in fire. Not in war. Not with a final desperate cry across the stars. One day, human signals filled the networks, news broadcasts, scientific data, music, chatter from freighters and colonies. The next, nothing. Complete silence. At first, the Concord assumed disaster. Perhaps a solar flare had wiped out their grids. Maybe their fragile politics had finally collapsed into nuclear ruin. Scouts were sent to investigate. They returned with baffling reports. Earth's moon still orbited an empty patch of space. The planet itself was simply gone. No debris field. No energy signature. No trace of explosion or evacuation, just absence. The official report called it an anomalous extinction event. A rare cosmic accident. A tragedy, but not a concern. The Concord moved on. Trade routes were adjusted. Human observer seats were quietly removed. Within a few cycles, most had forgotten Earth even existed, but not everyone. In a dimly lit archive deep within the Concord capital, a young analyst named Toma reviewed the final data logs from Earth's outer monitoring buoys. She was Selnari, a species known for patience, precision, and long memories. Unlike the proud Helians or the warlike Cathari, the Selnari valued quiet observation. Toma had always been drawn to the humans. She'd read their poetry, studied their history, even learned fragments of their old languages. There was something about their chaos that fascinated her. How they created beauty from pain. How they kept trying even when they knew they might fail. Now, as she scrolled through the last moments of Earth's existence, something caught her eye. Buried in the static of the final transmission, just before all signals ceased, was a phrase. Repeated in over 200 languages, including many the Concord didn't even recognize. It wasn't a distress call. It wasn't a farewell. It was a message, clear and calm. "We saw you watching." Toma froze. Her fingers hovered over the console. She replayed the segment 3 times. The phrase was real, deliberate, not random noise. Someone on Earth had known they were being observed, not just by traders or scouts, but by the Concord itself. And they had chosen to speak directly to their watchers before vanishing. She brought the finding to her supervisor, a senior Cathari archivist named Vrel. He was old, weary, and unimpressed. "It's static," he said, not even looking up from his screen. Human systems were unstable. Their final moments were likely filled with corrupted data. "Don't waste time on ghosts." But it was in every language, Toma insisted, even dead ones, and it was synchronized across all buoys at once. "That's not random," Vrel sighed. Humans were theatrical. They loved drama. Probably their last act, a poetic goodbye. File it under cultural artifact and move on. Toma did as she was told. But she couldn't forget it. Over the next few weeks, she dug deeper. She accessed restricted logs, cross-referenced patrol routes, and studied Concord surveillance records near Earth in the months before its disappearance. What she found unsettled her. In the year leading up to the silence, Concord observation drones had been stationed unusually close to human space, closer than protocol allowed. Officially, they were monitoring solar activity, but the logs showed they'd been scanning human cities, communication hubs, even private data networks. The Concord had been watching Earth more closely than anyone admitted, and Earth had known. Toma began to wonder, what if Earth hadn't been destroyed? What if they'd left on purpose? And if so, why? She tried to raise the issue again, this time with a junior security officer she trusted. But before she could finish her sentence, the officer's expression changed. He told her to stop asking questions. Some silences are meant to stay silent, he said quietly. That night, Toma's access to deep archives was revoked. Her personal logs were flagged for review. She was reassigned to routine border monitoring, a quiet punishment for curiosity. But as her shuttle carried her to her new post on the outer rim, she stared out at the stars and thought of Earth, of that final message, of the way humans had looked at the universe, not with fear but with wonder, even when they were being watched, even when they knew they were alone. Now someone was making sure no one remembered them. But Toma remembered. And in the cold dark between stars, she wondered if Earth was truly gone. Or if they were just waiting to be heard again. The Concorde called it an extinction. Toma suspected it was something else entirely. Something quiet. Something deliberate. Something that might one day return. For now, the galaxy moved on. Trade flowed. War simmered. The Council debated new regulations. And Earth became a myth, a cautionary tale about fragile civilizations. But myths have a way of coming back. And silence, Toma realized, was not always the end. Sometimes, it was just the beginning. 3 cycles had passed since Earth vanished and the galaxy had settled into its usual rhythm. Trade ships hummed along established routes, diplomats argued over resource shares, and the conquered council pretended nothing unusual had ever happened. Earth was now just a footnote in outdated archives, a ghost story told in hushed tones by fringe scholars. Most believed humanity had simply burned itself out, a tragic but predictable end for a species too emotional to survive the stars. But strange things began happening along the Perseus Arm. First, a Concorde freighter named the Dawn Carrier failed to check in at its scheduled port. When a rescue vessel arrived, they found the ship drifting, engines cold, life support running normally. The cargo hold was untouched. Food in the mess hall was still warm, but the crew, 23 beings from 3 different species, was gone. No signs of struggle, no escape pods missing, no distress signal ever sent. The Conquered Security Directorate called it piracy. They claimed raiders must have boarded silently, taken the crew and vanished. But experienced captains knew better. Silent boarding on a fully shielded freighter was nearly impossible. And why leave the cargo? Why leave everything else intact? Then it happened again. And again. Over the next few months, 7 more conquered vessels disappeared under identical conditions. All along the same stretch of space near former human colony worlds. Proxima Haven, New Carthage, Eos Prime. Places that had once buzzed with human voices, now empty and quiet, marked only by derelict stations and overgrown landing pads. The Council issued a quiet quarantine order. No ships were to approach those systems without special clearance. Officially, it was for safety. Unofficially, no one knew why. Toma, now stationed on a remote border monitoring post, watched the reports come in. Her new job was dull, tracking asteroid drift and scanning for smugglers, but she used her access to dig deeper. She compared the missing ships' last known positions with old human settlement maps. The pattern was undeniable. Every vanished vessel had passed within light minutes of a dead human world in the weeks before disappearing. She brought her findings to her new supervisor, a tired Helion named Kor. He listened, then shook his head. "You're chasing shadows," he said. "Those colonies were abandoned decades ago. There's nothing there." "But the timing," Toma began. "Coincidence," Kor interrupted. "The Perseus Arm is vast. Ships go missing all the time. Don't make it mean more than it does." Toma said nothing, but that night she ran a deeper scan. She bypassed standard filters and tapped into the raw sensor feed from a long-range buoy near Proxima Haven, the last known location of the freighter Skyward Hope, which had vanished 2 cycles ago. For hours, nothing. Just cosmic background noise and the faint hum of distant stars. Then at 03:17 Standard Time, something pulsed. It wasn't a signal. Not exactly. It was a harmonic resonance, a low-frequency vibration that didn't match any known engine, weapon, or natural phenomenon. It lasted less than a second. Then silence. Toma replayed it, slowed it down, isolated the waveform. Her breath caught. The pattern matched an old Terran lullaby, one she'd found in a human cultural archive months ago. A simple melody meant to calm children, But here in the void, it felt like a message. Before she could log it, her console flickered. The screen went black. Then in plain Terran script, letters she barely recognized but had studied for years, a single line appeared. You kept records. We kept memories. Her heart pounded. She reached for the comms to alert command, but the system rebooted. When it came back online, the anomaly was gone. The logs showed nothing unusual, just routine background noise. She tried to report it anyway, but command dismissed her. Sensor ghost, they said. Solar interference. You're overworked. Toma knew better. A week later, she requested a routine patrol near the ruins of Proxima Haven. Her request was denied. No reason to go there, command said. Stick to your sector, so she waited. And watched. Then came the report that changed everything. A salvage crew, ignoring the quarantine, had entered the Proxima Haven system looking for scrap. They never came out, but their final transmission, picked up by a passing trader, was chilling. Not screams, not panic, just a calm voice speaking in broken Terran. They're not gone. They're listening. The signal cut off mid-sentence. Toma knew she had to go herself. She falsified a maintenance log, claimed her shuttle needed calibration near the edge of the zone, and slipped away during a shift change. Her small vessel, the Whisper, carried no weapons, only sensors and a basic survival kit. She wasn't a soldier. She was a watcher, and she needed to see. As she approached Proxima Haven, the silence grew heavier. No comms traffic, no automated beacons. Even the background radiation seemed muted, as if the system itself was holding its breath. She scanned the old colony, crumbling domes, rusted towers, vines of alien moss crawling over human structures. Nothing moved, but her sensors picked up something odd, a faint energy signature deep underground. Not power, not heat, something structured, like a signal waiting to be read. She landed near the Central Archive, a building once used to store human history. The doors were sealed but not locked, as if someone had left them open on purpose. Inside, dust floated in the dim light. Terminals lined the walls, all dark. But in the center of the room, one console glowed softly. Toma approached slowly. The screen displayed a countdown. 0, 007. 006. She froze. At 0, the screen changed. Not to data, not to a message, but to a live feed. It showed the conquered capital, the High Council chamber. And there, in secret session, was Elder Vraxis of the Helion Collective, the most powerful voice on the council, meeting with a cloaked figure Toma had never seen before. The figure handed Vraxis a small device. Sleek silver, humming faintly, Toma recognized it instantly from Forbidden Archives. A neural dampener, a tool designed to erase memories, to silence minds. Banned by conquered law for over 1,000 cycles, Vraxis accepted it without hesitation. The feed cut out. Toma stumbled back, her mind racing. The conquered wasn't just ignoring Earth's disappearance, they were covering something up. And Vraxis was involved. Before she could process it, her shuttle's alarm blared. Someone was scanning her. She ran outside, heart pounding. The Whisper's engines were already powering down, remotely shut off. She tried to override it, but the controls were dead. Then a voice came through her helmet comms. Not through the ship. Directly into her earpiece. Calm, human. You weren't supposed to see that yet. Toma spun around. No one was there. Who are you? She whispered. A pause. Then, we are what you left behind. The shuttle's systems rebooted. The engines hummed back to life. The voice said nothing more. Toma boarded quickly, hands shaking. As she lifted off, she looked down at the silent colony. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was visiting a grave. She felt like she was being watched by the dead. Back at her post, she tried to access the feed again. Gone. The console in the archive was dark. Her own logs showed only static. Even her memory of the event felt fuzzy, as if someone had gently blurred the edges. But she remembered enough. Earth hadn't died. They had left, and they had taken their memories with them. Now, someone in the Conquered was trying to erase those memories from everyone else. Toma sat in her quarters that night, staring at the stars. She thought of the lullaby, of the phrase on the screen, of Vraxis accepting that forbidden device. The Conquered had thought humanity was weak, emotional, disposable. But what if their emotions were their strength? What if their memories were their weapon? And what if silence wasn't emptiness but preparation? She didn't know what was coming. But she knew one thing for certain. The galaxy believed Earth was gone, but Earth was just getting started. Rumors spread like fire through the outer systems. Whispers of ghost ships, vessels with no markings moving faster than any known engine should allow, appearing and vanishing without a trace. Traders told stories of fleets that blinked out of existence when scanned, of cargo holds found empty but perfectly preserved, of crews gone without a single sign of struggle. The Concord Security Directorate called it mass hysteria. They blamed faulty sensors, pirate tricks, even hallucinogenic space spores. But those who traveled the dark lanes knew better. Something was out there, and it was cleaning up. Toma had been branded a troublemaker. Her access to core systems was revoked. Her reports were ignored. But she had one advantage: no one expected her to act. She was just a low-level analyst, quiet and unimportant, perfect for slipping through the cracks. She stole a decommissioned scout ship during a maintenance cycle. It wasn't fast, but it was old enough to lack modern tracking beacons. She called it the Moat. Small, forgettable, easy to lose in the void. Her destination, Epsilon Indi. Once, Epsilon Indi had been home to a human research outpost, Project Echo, they'd called it. A place where scientists studied deep space communication, quantum entanglement, and the nature of consciousness itself. After Earth vanished, the Concorde sealed the system, citing unstable energy readings. No one had been allowed near it since. Toma knew better. If Earth had left a message, it would be there. The journey took 12 cycles. She lived on ration bars and recycled water, scanning for patrols, avoiding conquered checkpoints. When she finally dropped out of fold space near Epsilon Indi's third moon, her sensors lit up. Not with ships, but with something stranger. A faint rhythmic pulse coming from beneath the moon's icy crust. Not mechanical. Not natural. Alive in a way she couldn't explain. She landed in a hidden crater far from old landing zones. The surface was frozen solid, winds howling across plains of blue ice. Her thermal scans showed a structure buried deep below, human design but altered, reinforced with materials not in any Concord database. Using an old access code she'd pieced together from fragmented archives, she triggered a hidden hatch. It opened silently, revealing a dark shaft. She descended on a rusted lift, heart pounding. At the bottom, she found a vault, not a weapons cache, not a data center. A tomb of mines. Rows upon rows of crystalline cores lined the walls, each glowing faintly with soft blue light. Thousands of them. Each one, according to the labels etched in Terran script, contained a full neural imprint, a human consciousness, uploaded at the moment of Earth's disappearance. Scientists, artists, teachers, children, entire lives preserved in light. Toma walked slowly down the aisle, her breath fogging in the cold air. She reached out and touched one core. Instantly, a voice filled her mind, not loud, not invasive, just present. "Hello, Watcher." She pulled her hand back, startled. The voice didn't speak again, but she knew it wasn't a recording. It was aware. In the center of the vault stood a terminal, still active. Its screen flickered to life as she approached. No login required. It knew who she was. The display showed a live feed, not from a camera, but from somewhere deep inside the Concord Capitol. Toma recognized the chamber, the private council room used only for secret votes. And there, seated at the table, was Elder Vraxis. Across from him sat the same cloaked figure from the Proxima Haven feed. This time the figure lowered their hood. Toma gasped. It was human, not a ghost. Not a memory. A living, breathing human. Pale skin, sharp eyes, wearing a suit that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. They spoke calmly, handing Vraxis another neural dampener, this one larger, more advanced. "We've contained the leaks," the human said. "But your people are starting to ask questions. You must act faster." Vraxis nodded. "The purge begins next cycle. All records of pre-vanishing humanity will be erased. Even the archives." The human smiled faintly. "Good, let them forget. It's easier that way." The feed ended. Toma stood frozen. The Concord wasn't just hiding the truth, they were actively destroying it. And a human was helping them, but why? She accessed the terminal's logs. Buried in encrypted layers, she found the answer. Project Echo hadn't just been about communication. It had been a backup plan. In the final days before Earth's disappearance, Humanity had completed a breakthrough, full consciousness transfer. Not just copying minds, but moving them. Entire populations uploaded into a quantum network hidden in fold space. Earth hadn't been destroyed. It had been evacuated, digitally, but not everyone had gone. A small group stayed behind, volunteers, rebels, guardians. Their mission, protect the truth, watch the galaxy. And if the conquered ever tried to repeat its mistakes on other young species, they would act. The human working with Vraxis wasn't a traitor. They were a spy, feeding false information, slowing the purge, buying time. Toma's hands trembled as she copied the data onto a shielded drive. She had proof now, not just of Earth's survival, but of the Concord's betrayal. As she turned to leave, the terminal flashed one last message. "They're coming for you. Run." She didn't wait. She sprinted back to the lift, heart hammering. Outside, the wind had stopped. The sky was too still. Her ship's sensors screamed. 3 Concorde interceptors had just dropped out of fold space above the moon. They'd tracked her. She launched the moat just as plasma fire scorched the ice behind her. She dodged into a canyon, engines straining. The interceptors were faster, but she knew the system better than they did. She flew low, using the moon's magnetic anomalies to mask her signature. One interceptor broke off, scanning the vault entrance. Toma held her breath. If they found the cores. But then something strange happened. The interceptor's lights flickered. Its engine sputtered. Then, without warning, it went dark, drifting, silent. The other 2 ships panicked. They fired wildly, then tried to retreat. But one by one, their systems failed. Not destroyed, just turned off. Toma watched from a safe distance as the ships floated, lifeless in the void. Then, a voice came through her comms, calm, human, familiar from the vault. "You have what you need, go, tell them we remember." She didn't see who spoke, but as she jumped to fold space, she glanced back. The moon's surface shimmered for a moment like heat haze over desert sand. Then it was still. Back in neutral space, Toma sent fragments of the data to every underground network she could reach. Fringe scholars, rebel traders, minor species tired of conquered lies. Within days, the truth began to spread. Not all of it. Just enough. Whispers turned to shouts. Species that had long suspected the Concorde of hiding dark secrets now had proof. Protests erupted on a dozen worlds. The Council scrambled to contain the fallout, blaming data forgeries and xenophobic propaganda. But the seed was planted. Toma knew she couldn't return to conquered space. She was a fugitive now, but she didn't care. She had seen the vault. She had heard the voices. She knew Earth wasn't gone. They were waiting and they were watching. As her ship drifted between stars, she thought of the human in the council chamber, of the cores glowing in the ice, of the way the Concord ships had simply stopped. Humanity hadn't just survived, they had become something new, something the galaxy wasn't ready for, and the Concord's greatest mistake wasn't ignoring them. It was thinking they were ever truly quiet. The galaxy was unraveling. What began as whispers had become a storm. Minor species, those long ignored by the conquered, demanded answers. Protests flared on trade hubs. Ships refused conquered orders. The Council, once unshakable, now argued behind closed doors, its unity cracking under the weight of suspicion. Elder Vraxis claimed the leaks were fabrications, but even his allies hesitated. Too many questions, too many missing ships, too many ghosts. And then the blackouts began. Not just comms failures, not just power surges. Entire sectors went dark, not in destruction, but in silence. Lights stayed on. Air recyclers hummed, but navigation grids failed. Data networks collapsed. Even neural implants, devices woven into the brains of millions, went inert for minutes at a time, leaving their users disoriented, confused, terrified. No damage, no trace of sabotage, just a pause, as if the universe itself had held its breath. The Conquered called it a solar anomaly, a rare cascade failure in deep space infrastructure, but Toma knew better. She'd seen it before, the same quiet shutdown near Epsilon Indi. This wasn't random. It was precise, targeted, and it always happened near conquered strongholds or former human worlds. She drifted now in a stolen freighter, patched together from scrap and hope. Her name was known across the outer systems, not as a fugitive but as a truth-teller. Refugees, rebels, and curious scholars sent her fragments of data, sensor logs, strange encounters. All pointed to one thing. Humanity was not only alive, they were acting, but how? And where? Then came a signal unlike any other, not a broadcast, not a message. A resonance, felt more than heard, pulling at the edges of known space. It came from the edge of the Veil Nebula, a dead zone avoided by all sane travelers. Gravity there was unstable. Time bent strangely. Ships that entered rarely returned. Toma went anyway. Her freighter groaned as it entered the nebula's outer rim. Sensors flickered. Stars outside the viewport seemed to shift as if seen through water. Then, without warning, the ship's engines cut out. Not failed, just stopped. Yet the vessel didn't drift. It hung in place, suspended. A voice spoke in her mind, not through comms, not through sound, but directly, like a thought that wasn't hers. Come. The airlock opened on its own. She stepped out into void, but there was no void. Instead, she stood on a platform of smooth, dark metal, floating in a space that wasn't space. Stars swirled above like paint in water. Below, nothing. Around her, silence so deep it felt like pressure. Then figures emerged from the mist. Humans. Not ghosts. Not projections. Flesh and blood wearing suits that shimmered like liquid shadow. Their eyes held centuries of memory. They moved with calm purpose as if time meant nothing to them. One stepped forward. A woman with short, silver-streaked hair and eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. She wore no insignia, carried no weapon, but authority radiated from her like heat. "You're Toma," she said. Her voice was soft but clear. The watcher who wouldn't look away. Toma nodded, unable to speak. "I'm Echo," the woman said. "Not my real name, but it's close enough." She led Toma through a corridor that bent in impossible ways, into a chamber filled with light, not artificial, living light, pulsing, shifting, forming shapes that almost looked like faces, then dissolving again. "This is the Fold," Echo said. "Not a place, a state. Humanity didn't flee the galaxy. We stepped between its layers. We learned to exist in the silence you all ignore." Toma finally found her voice. "Why show me this?" "Because you saw the truth," Echo said. "And because the Concord is about to do to others what they let happen to us." She gestured to a wall of light. It showed live feeds from across the galaxy, worlds the Concord had labeled developing. On one, children worked in mines under Helian overseers. On another, a native species language was being erased from schools, replaced with Concord Standard. On a third, crops were being burned to force dependence on imported food. The Concord calls it guidance, Echo said bitterly. "We called it the same thing once, until we realized no one was guiding us. They were just watching us break." Toma remembered Earth's final message. "We saw you watching. You uploaded yourselves," she said slowly. "But some of you stayed behind. In the real world, not stayed," Echo corrected. "Returned. We can move between the Fold and your reality. We choose when to appear, when to act, and the blackouts." Toma asked. "A warning," Echo said. "A taste of what silence feels like. We're not destroying systems. We're showing them what it's like to be powerless. To be watched. To have your voice taken." Toma thought of the neural dampeners Vraxis had accepted. "He's trying to erase all memory of humanity, to make sure no one learns from your fate." Echo smiled, but it held no warmth. "Let him try. Memory isn't just in data. It's in bones, in songs, in the way a mother holds her child. You can't erase that." "Not really," she turned to Toma. "We don't want war. We never did. But we won't let them do this again. Not to anyone." "What do you plan to do?" Toma asked. Echo looked out at the swirling stars. "We're giving the Conquered a choice: change, or become as quiet as we once were." Before Toma could respond, alarms flared in the Fold. Not sound, but a ripple in the light. Echo's expression hardened. "They've found the relay," she said. "Vraxis sent a strike team to destroy the vault on Epsilon Indi. They think if they erase the cores, they erase us." Toma's blood ran cold. "The minds, the uploaded humans, are safe," Echo said quickly. "The vault is just a mirror. But if they destroy it, they'll believe they've won. And they'll move faster." She turned to Toma. "You must go. Warn the others. Tell them the truth isn't in archives. It's in action. But what can I do?" Toma asked. "Be loud," Echo said. "Where we are silent, you must speak. Where we hide, you must stand. The galaxy needs to see that humanity didn't vanish. We evolved, and we remember. She pressed a small device into Toma's hand, a crystal warm to the touch. This will guide you and protect you. For now. The platform began to fade. The stars blurred. Wait, Toma said. Are you all that's left of Earth? Echo looked at her, eyes full of sorrow and strength. Earth was never just a planet. It was an idea that even the smallest voice matters, that pain can become purpose, that silence can be a weapon, but only if you choose when to break it. Then she was gone. Toma found herself back in her freighter, drifting at the edge of the Veil Nebula. The crystal glowed softly in her palm. On her console, a new message blinked. Coordinates. A meeting point, a rebellion forming in the dark. She set a course. Behind her, deep in the nebula, something vast and quiet stirred. The Concord thought they were hunting ghosts, but ghosts don't build. Vaults.ghosts don't leave warnings, ghosts don't choose. Silence. Only the living do, and humanity was very much alive. Toma activated the drive. The stars stretched into lines. Ahead lay chaos, danger, maybe death, but also truth. And for the first time since Earth vanished, she wasn't afraid, because silence wasn't the end. It was the space before the storm. The conquered capital hung in the void like a jewel of order and control. Its rings of light, its towering spires, its endless corridors of polished stone, all built to show the galaxy that peace was possible under the Council's rule. But inside, the peace was breaking. Species that had sat together for centuries now whispered behind closed doors. Trust had turned to suspicion. And at the center of it all stood Elder Vraxis, his face calm, his hands steady, his secrets rotting beneath the surface. He had called an emergency session, not to answer the growing unrest, but to crush it. He would declare the leaks false. He would name Toma and others as traitors. He would push through a final law. All records of pre-vanishing humanity would be erased from every system, every mind, every child's textbook. The past would be rewritten. The truth would die, but before he could speak, the lights dimmed, not flickered, not failed. Dimmed as if the stars themselves had turned away. Every screen in the chamber, every data pad, every wall display went black. Then in perfect unison they lit up again, not with conquered symbols, not with official seals, but with words. In every language spoken across the galaxy, ancient and new, living and dead. You cataloged our pain. Now feel ours. Vraxis stood frozen. Around him the other council members gasped. Some clutched their heads. Others fell to their knees. One elder, a gentle plant being from the verdant reach, began to weep silently. Because the words were not just seen, they were felt. Into every mind in the chamber, and beyond. Across every world linked to the Concord network, flooded memories. Not images, not stories, full sensory experiences. The taste of ash in a child's mouth during a human city's last hour. The sound of a mother's scream as her home collapsed in a war no one outside her planet even noticed. The crushing weight of knowing your species was being watched, judged, and found wanting, while the powerful did nothing. They felt what Earth had felt, not just once. Over and over, every injustice humanity had endured while the Concord looked on. Every time they begged for help and were told to mature. Every time their culture was mocked, their warnings ignored, their extinction treated as a footnote. The session chamber became a room of broken beings. Vraxis tried to stand, to shout, to deny, but his own mind betrayed him. He saw himself accepting the neural dampener. He felt the cold weight of it in his hand. He remembered the human spy's eyes, knowing, sad, disappointed. And he understood for the first time that he hadn't been controlling the situation. He'd been part of the lesson. When the visions ended, silence returned. But it was a different silence now, heavy, changed. The council did not speak for a long time. Then, one by one, the members rose, not to argue, but to leave. The Helian delegation walked out without a word. The Cathari slammed their fist on the table, not in anger but in shame, and followed. Within the hour, 3 species formally withdrew from the Concord. Others announced reviews of all past policies. The unity that had held the galaxy together for centuries was gone. Vraxis remained alone in the chamber, staring at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. Outside, chaos reigned, but not the kind he feared. No riots, no wars, just people waking up, minor species reclaiming their languages, colonies declaring independence, traders sharing forbidden histories. The truth, once released, could not be caged again, and at the center of it all floated a single unmarked beacon near the old Sol system. It broadcast one message on loop in every language, calm and clear. We are not your lesson. We are your mirror. Toma watched it all from a hidden station on the edge of known space. She had sent the final data, the proof of Raxus's meetings, the vault records, Echo's warning, to every network she could reach. She expected to be hunted. Instead, she was hailed, not as a hero but as a witness, and witnesses, she learned, were harder to silence than warriors. She thought of Echo, of the fold, of the quiet strength in those human eyes. They had not returned with weapons. They had not demanded revenge. They had simply reminded the galaxy of its own conscience, and that had been enough. Now, as she looked out the viewport, she saw them. A fleet, not conquered, not pirate, not like anything she'd ever seen. Sleek, silent ships, shaped like falling leaves gliding through fold space without sound or flash. No weapons visible, no flags, just presence. They took position near the beacon, forming a loose ring around the empty space where Earth once was. Not guarding, not claiming, just being. A message came through, not on any channel but directly into her mind, soft, familiar. It's done, Echo said. Is it? Toma asked aloud, though no one was there. For now, Echo replied. The conquered will rebuild. Some will learn, some will forget. But the mirror is up. And mirrors don't lie. Toma smiled faintly. What will you do now? A pause, then. We'll watch. We'll remember. And if silence is needed again, we'll know when to break it. The fleet held its position for 3 full cycles. Then one by one the ships vanished, not exploding, not jumping, just fading, like mist in morning light. Gone, but not lost. Toma turned her ship toward the outer rim. There was work to do, new alliances to form, truths to protect. She was no longer just an archivist. She was a bridge between what was, what is, and what could be. Behind her, the beacon continued its message. Simple, unchanging, powerful. The galaxy would never be the same, because Earth had exited quietly, but its return had shaken the stars. And in the quiet that followed, something new began to grow, not from fear, but from memory. Not from power, but from understanding. The Council had fallen not to war, but to truth, and humanity, once thought fragile and loud, had proven that the deepest strength lies in knowing when to speak, and when to let silence speak for you.